If you're interested in learning how to make an end table like this one, I'm going to show you how to do it, so stay tuned. If you're like me, you probably watch a lot of woodworking on YouTube. Well, there's a lot of great videos out there about different projects and furniture and chairs and tables and stuff like that to make, but I find that it's very unusual for me to come across some kind of project on YouTube that I really want to make. That's when I came across this video from Blackwood Decor that was titled Beginning Woodworking Project. And I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting looking table. It looks simple. It looks really kind of cool. I kind of like the design of it. And so I watched it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make one of those. So the guy who runs Blackwood Decor is named Blake, and he's actually got free plans and a full video on exactly how to do this table. What I'm going to show you here today is not going to be exactly how he did it. And I'm not going to go through every little step of the way on how to make it because Blake's already done the work, and if you really want to see how to make your table, watch his video and you can find step by step, plus the drawings that you'll need to use as a reference to make your own. The one thing to keep in mind, as I described to you how I did this build, it's not an exact reproduction of what Blake made. I follow a lot of his patterns, but also there's a lot of things that I kind of made adjustments along the way, either because I wanted to make an adjustment to suit my taste or because I made a mistake and I needed to correct that. And that's one of the things about making woodworking projects, is that you don't have to follow the directions exactly the way the creator made it. Kind of put your own twist. That's all right. And, if you make mistakes, you just learn how to correct them. This particular build is not too difficult. You basically can take a 6-inch wide dimension board of lumber that's about 8 feet long, and you can make this entire table out of that. So it's really economical to build. So I've got a local store named Andrew nearby me, and he's got a whole bunch of wood. And so basically I just go to him and get this. What I made this out of is old growth cherry. So this cherry tree has been around on his property for maybe hundreds of years. The nice thing about old growth cherries, it's got really interesting figuring, which is what I really like. If you can get access to that, that's great. But if all you have is Home Depot and those kind of shops, and all you have is pine, go for it, because you know what? It's really about learning how to make something and honing your skills. And then, it may be, in a lot of respects, it might be even better to go that way, because then you learn how to make it with cheaper materials, or even plywood if you want to. And then you can go ahead later and make a table out of more nicer wood if you need to. All right, so let's get into the build. So in Blake's video, he did all the measurements and laid it out onto the actual workpiece. For me, I decided to make templates out of it to make it a little bit easier so that I wouldn't have to recreate things over and over again. And if I wanted to make another copy of the table later, I would have a template of all the major pieces to make it much easier as we move forward. In the video that Blake made, he actually makes the first piece and uses that as a template for the other two legs. In this case, I did make a separate template using 1/4-inch MDF. So I tried to make a really great template to work from and put it on the actual workpiece to figure out where do I want to cut the boards. So I'm looking at the different grain patterns and voids, knots and stuff, and thinking about, hey, what do I want? Now, if you're for the legs, you want to have straight grain and just kind of line them up, and then drew, outlines using the template onto the workpiece. Then I used both a trim saw that I've got as well as a jigsaw to rough cut the pieces out of the lumber. In this particular case, I decided to use my friend Matt's Carvex from Festool, and perhaps I didn't have the best technique at times. So once those pieces were cut out, I took them over to the bandsaw to do more rough cutting, but bring the cuts closer to the actual lines. What you want to do is you want to try to remove as much material as you possibly can, so that when you bring it to the router doesn't have to work as hard, and it reduces the chances for kickback, which could lead to some kind of injury. So do try to make it as tight as you possibly can without going over the lines. Now on my bandsaw, I've only got a 4 TPI or tooth per inch blade on it, so even though we're using the bandsaw and trying to cut slowly, it still is going to leave a pretty rough cut on the piece. Now that those pieces are cut out, I'm going to take the template and affix it to the workpiece itself using double stick tape to do so. Now for this, I'm using this 3M Extreme double-sided tape, which is pretty thick. The thicker tapes work better if you have rough sawn lumber. So the more rougher your lumber is, the better these thicker ones are. Now the thinner tapes work better because they're tighter to the piece. They bring the two pieces together, but they don't stick as well when you have rough lumber. So these work really well for that, but they are pretty strong. So don't use too much of it. Just use enough to hold your template in position. Once the templates are attached to the workpiece, then it's time to bring it to the router table, where I've installed a flush trim router bit What this is, it's a basic straight bit that has a bearing on it. Now, a lot of YouTubers talk about compressions and coated bits and all these things that are really kind of cool, but you know what? This is just a really simple, affordable, straight trim flush bit from Vermont American. It costs like $10, so really economical for your pocket. And you know what, if you're just doing straight cuts, I don't know if you really need to get into the fancy bits. Of course, if you want to and you got the budget, go for it. The one of the things you want to remember, you want to take shallow passes each time to make it easier for you to, cut the piece. I'm not terribly good at that. I just don't trim the pieces enough, and so it gets a little bit hectic at times, but do try to take shallow passes, and that'll make your life a lot easier. One thing to remember is that when you're using a router table, you want to take the piece and you want to move the piece through the bit going from right to left. You're going to be going against the spinning of the blade. As you can see, I'm not very good at maintaining or understanding this right to left kind of thing. So do be careful, because the piece can get caught up and fly away from you. And as you can see, I really don't know how to cut ends. To do it properly, I've been told you're supposed to start with the end grain cuts and then do the long grain cuts. So don't do as I do as I say. Another thing to remember is to use the push blocks to help keep your hands away from the spinning bit. If you happen to make a mistake, it won't make for a pleasant day. Now, once the cuts are finished, remove the templates. They can be a little bit difficult to remove, especially if you use a lot of tape, but I just wedged in a putty knife and just pried them apart. Do be careful as you leverage against the template, because there is always the chance that you could crack or snap or break the template in some way, and all the work you did to make the template is now ruined. I don't remember if Blake did this for his legs, but I wanted to make sure mine were dimensioned the same. So I taped them together using the tenon side to align all three, and then ran the ends through the table saw to make them all the same. As always, be sure to wear PPE. I prefer NIOSH certified dust masks, hearing protectors, and safety glasses. For the tabletop, I also created a template. For this, I used an old piece of plywood that needed some resurfacing. Okay, it didn't need resurfacing, but it just didn't look pretty enough. Hit it with some 60 grit Granat Net sandpaper from Festool with the Bosch GET 756N, and it's all golden. And if you're like me and love the Festool Rotex but don't have the extra cash for one, the Bosch is an excellent substitute. I've used the Rotex quite a bit, and this Bosch is pretty much its equal, for half the price. With the template all ready, it's time to cut the top pieces. I rough cut the lumber with both the trim saw and the track saw, planed and squared two edges on the joiner, made the surfaces parallel with the planer, and then made the other two surfaces parallel using the table saw, giving me fully surfaced S4S lumber. If you told me a year ago I'd be doing this, I'd never have believed you. That's because I do coffee for a living, and I also do coffee here on YouTube. In fact, I'm mainly a coffee YouTuber. This woodworking stuff is my alter ego. If you have an interest in coffee, how to make it, how to appreciate it, where in the world to go to try coffee, come check out my main channel called Ono Coffee. And if you'd like to try my coffee, that's available on SpurrowCoffee.com. All right, back to the table. With all the pieces surfaced, it's time to figure out how I really want them to go together. Like I said, I love figured woods and voids and chose these pieces because of those highlights. I know some people only love clear wood, and I get that, but for me, I like to let the wood speak to me, and I find the beauty in the things that other people may find ugly. The red marks are the center lines for the dominoes I'm going to use to align the glue up. If you watch woodworking YouTube, you hear a lot of the creators either apologizing or talking about domino hate. Maybe this is my chance to do the same. My friend Matt got the domino last summer and let me use it for a project, and I just loved it. It makes joinery so much easier. Loose mortise and tenons. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I do think there's a different level of craftsmanship with hand-cutting mortise and tenons, but I'm really not that guy. And you're going to get the chance to see that with this table. I know people complain that the domino is expensive, and it is. However, if you can find a way to swing it, I doubt you'll be disappointed. When I was shooting this, I was still in the early days of my domino use, so I cut the mortises with the wider setting. Here's the thing, while domino makes it easier, it doesn't make it easy. There's still a lot to learn about size, cut depth, plate height, angles, technique, and more. I've probably watched more domino videos than any other woodworking videos to absorb as much as I can, and I'm still making mistakes. If you're looking for tips, tricks, and insights into how to use the domino, I think Brian Sedgley, also known as Sedge, does some of the best that are out there. You can find him on Fridays at noon on Festool Live or on his own channel called Sedge Tool. After dry fitting to make sure it all aligns correctly, it's time for glue up. Whenever I watch woodworkers on YouTube, it always seems like they use a lot of glue. Glue is coming out of their joints in glops, and I just don't get it. Am I missing something? It seems like a waste. Glue is cheap, but not cheap enough for me to waste it. Plus, when I think about it, you squeeze pieces together, meaning there's not much space for glue to exist. So I try to use as little glue as possible, and I still have squeeze out that needs to be cleaned. Also, I like to clean up the squeeze out with a wet towel. It saves me some time, and I don't really want to do the extra work scraping and cleaning the surface after it's dried. By the way, I'm using these Bremen parallel clamps that I got from Harbor Freight when they had a sale for $25 each. Now, I don't have years of woodworking experience behind me, but these have been an excellent buy. After letting the top cure for a day, it's time to take them out and get rolling by retracing the pattern onto the piece just to make sure I can see it. Then it's back to the bandsaw for the rough cut before attaching the template. They always say that the glue line is stronger than the wood. I was curious about this and decided to see for myself. Here, the board snapped along the grain. Looks like it's true. Take the piece back to the router table and run it against the flush cut trim bit. And here's why you should take a lot of time to make sure that your templates are perfect. You can see the slight indent in the template is being transferred to the piece. That's going to require some extra time and effort to clean up later. Before you take the template off, now is a good time to sand down the underside of the table. I started off with some 80 grit Cubitron extract from 3M, as well as a little block planing along the joints. The underside isn't perfectly aligned as the top side. This is in part due to the domino alignment. When you use the domino properly, it can reference the one side so that all parts are aligned, meaning that if your pieces aren't perfectly the same height, it's only the one side that no one will see that will reveal your milling incompetence. With the underside smoothened, it's time to figure out the triangular leg placement. First, I use a builder square to mark 2 lines from points on the edge of the top to give us the center point. Then I use a string attached to a pencil to mark a half circle, using the points to create lines that mark where the legs will be positioned. In his Blackwood decor video, Blake does a much better and more detailed job on explaining exactly how to do this. Now it's time to make the tenons by marking a 3/8 inch line from the top of the leg. This will be our cut line, and I'm using this roller marker because it's more precise than a pencil. The tenon itself will be a 1/2 inch thick, so I'm using a center measure to correctly mark the dimension. And as you can see, my ruler is red, which means it's from woodpeckers, making me a real YouTuber. However, I bought this hex scale myself, and I've got the 24-inch version as well. I might have bought more, but the problem is that most of my work is in metric, and Woodcraft doesn't stock woodpeckers in metric except for the hex scales. And I was going to buy more hex scales to complete the 4 sizes, but when I wrote to Woodpeckers to ask about getting the racket for my hex scales, they told me they would only sell me the racket if I bought the entire set for like $160. That's not a good deal. Because of this, it's unlikely I'll get the remainder of the hex scales. Back to the router table where I'm using a spiral upcut bit and the fence to cut the tenon out of the leg. Once the part has been routed, I use the square to mark where I have to cut off the ends and then clamp the leg to the bench. Now this is where I start to envision myself as a real woodworker by using a handsaw and a little hand sanding to clean up my shoddy craftsmanship. But a tenon is nothing without a mortise. So I pulled the router out of the table and went to install the bit into the collet when my finger scraped along the spiral upcut and created a bit of a gash. Thanks, Whiteside. So make sure you have a first aid kit handy and make sure you restock it. Mine was a bit short on band-aids. Not to be daunted, I dropped some Neosporin on the wound and wrapped it with a band-aid that was pretty much just too small for the cut and kept going. I figured that I would just sand away any blood that got on the workpiece. After laying out the channels for the mortise with the center rule, I used a big rafting square as a router guide with a 1/2 inch straight cut bit and did several passes to get the proper depth. And then I did more woodworking by using a chisel to square the channels before test fitting the legs. From there, it's time to sand. And truth be told, I actually like sanding. Perhaps it's because I've got a nice sander, the Festool ETS EC150/3, which does make sanding pleasant, but more because it's in the detail. It shows your attention to detail, which from my day job in food service and hospitality is a major component. A piece of furniture can look nice, but does it feel nice? This is what I like about sanding. You bring it to the point of feeling luxurious. As I was sanding, I noticed a bit of a crack in one of the legs due to my poor use of the router table. I wanted to prevent further cracking, so I'm using a bit of CA glue and activator. Harbor Freight has a very economical CA glue, and I'm not sure if I need anything else. My thinking is that CA is CA is CA, and it probably matters little which brand you use, especially if you're just using it as a filler. Now, if I can only figure out the proper formulation for activator, I'd be really happy. If you have a good recipe that evaporates quickly, let me know about it in the comments. While I like to use a 6-inch sander, the round parts in the leg need something with more finesse. To get there, I'm using the Festool DTS 400 sander. I got this on special and I thought that I would use it very occasionally, but I've surprised myself with how often I've been turning to use the sander. It has a 2mm orbit, making great for finish and detail sanding, and I'm using to bring the legs to 180 grit with Festool Granat. After a dry fit to make sure the legs fit correctly and flush, I need to clear out the knot hole in the top. There's some limb pieces remaining that will only be problematic if I leave them there. Just use a pick and a vacuum to clear it out. And then it's time to bring the top to the final sanding of 180. You might have noticed I've used a variety of abrasives, both Festool Granat Net, and 3M Cubitron Extract. I find that all of these are very similar in quality and don't have any issues switching between them. Now it's time for glue up. First off, by taping the mortises to help reduce the amount of cleanup after. Brush in some Titebond 2 and insert the legs. In this case, the legs are inset enough from the edge that clamping is a bit more difficult. So I turn the table over on the legs and use some routers as weight to set the glue. After about half an hour, let's have a look. Recently, I learned about George Nakashima and have been quite interested in his work. I liked the way he talked about natural finishing, like tung oil, and I wanted to give it a try. Now, using tung oil is pretty straightforward. Wipe it on liberally, wait a little while, and then wipe it off. There's a lot of products out there with some formulation of tung oil, but this is tung oil. Pure tung oil, nothing else. And it smells a little bit nutty. I had brought the table inside because it's the middle of winter and it's frigid in the garage. The thing about tung oil finishes is that it takes a long time to cure, and you should wait about a week between coats. The first coat was done on February 20th, and this second coat I'm doing on March 5th. I've also noticed that in that one little week's time, the depth of the grain has improved. And that's my build of the Blackwood decor and table using old growth cherry. Be on the lookout for the debrief video where I take a look at this piece and discuss what I like, what I hate, and where I went wrong. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. Please consider subscribing if you liked it, and see you next time.